The World Without Visas. Around the World with Valery Shanin. The travel across China became the next stage of the World Without Visas project, within which Valery Shanin travels only around the countries, visa-free for Russians. On this travel, his fellow travelers were Mikhail Ivanov from Alma-Ata, Mainur Klemantieva from the island of Sakhalin, and Ivan Obaskalov from Surgut. China, the T-Way. Third series. Kunming is known in China as the City of Eternal Spring. It is always sunny and warm here, and not hot. There are wide highways, skyscrapers, noise, din, and vanity in the center of the city. But should you take a turn aside from the central streets, at once you get in one of the cozy city parks. Exactly here, locals spend most of their free time. Some dance, some sing, some quietly admire the blossoming lotuses. The road goes to the south past the rice fields and villages. The weather is cloudy and rainy. The rain is eroding the road's surface. Mud flows occur frequently. It creates traffic jams. The movement on the road stops. Here is our situation. It will be hard to get to the ferry. We'll have to cut our way through with an axe. It does not seem to come on anyone's mind to call the emergency services or to call experts. Drivers and passengers start working themselves, rolling up the sleeves. They work a little absurdly, but amicably, with big enthusiasm too. It won't affect the cars at all. Jiangshui, one of the oldest cities in the southern part of the Yunnan Province. The city, with its 12 centuries-long history, is included in the National Heritage List of Historic and Cultural Centers. Jiangshui was founded not by Chinese, but by the representatives of Yui nationality. They named it Huili. The name sounds indecent to the Russian ear, but in translation it only means the wide sea. Jiangshui is the same word, only in Chinese. The old town was once surrounded with a wall. Only separate fragments and several gates have remained of them. The biggest one is the eastern gate of Chaoyonglu. Now they serve as a symbolical border between the historic center and new building blocks. The majority of the buildings that remain until now was constructed in the 14th to the 17th centuries. The local Confucian Temple Wen Miao was founded even earlier, sometime in the 13th to the 14th century. At that time, it was the largest Confucian temple of China. During the past 700 years, there was only one other Confucian temple built that surpassed it by its size, the temple in the homeland of Confucius in Khufu. The Confucian Temple in Jiangshui is not one building, but a huge temple complex. There are sanctuaries, educational classes, pavilions, and arbors. You can see them all if you take a walk around the territory fenced with a high brick wall. From one courtyard into another and into the third one, the path will bring you naturally to the coast of the pond, overgrown with lotuses. The territory of the temple complex is packed with people. However, they came here not to offer sacrifices or to pray. They act as if they are having a day off in the city park. Western fast food actively gets into China. Potato chips begin to gradually replace rice, but Chinese cuisine has been resisting so far. In the package, take away 7 local rubles. Not bad for a good breakfast and lunch.
Так сколько в результате? 7 рублей местных. Довольно неплохо для полноценного завтрака с обедом.
Valery, Mainur and Ivan continue further to the south on the next sleeping bus to Miao. I hope that we are in Miao. However, there are no obvious proofs of it. We arrived at around 4 o'clock in the morning in complete darkness. Turns out we passed by Miao sometime during the night. The driver, for a reason known to him alone, didn't wake us up and took the travelers to the final stop in Jinhong. Muyeang Wo Kham Chiang Rung, or Lu Kingdom, was the state of one Thai nationality, the Lu people. The city of Chiang Hung was the capital of this kingdom. It is the present city of Jinhong, the capital of Sishuanbanna-Dai autonomous region of China. In this region of China, ethnic Chinese never made the majority of the population. Even today, after the reinforced assimilation according to the official population census, it is Thais, the Khans, the Laks, Bulanas, Jings, Yaos, Miaos, Bais, Huayets, Vas, Chunas and other national minorities who live here. In this locality, lying approximately at the latitude of the Tropic of Cancer, there are fertile soils and humid tropical climate, clean rivers and cool mountain air, and impenetrable evergreen forest. It is very warm and very humid here. We started on our track. We are walking on the path past the tea plantations. Ai Nipa will be our guide in the rural areas near the Laotian border, one of the representative of Thai nationality.
In the tea plantation, and because have nice smelling, so the tea can have special quality, special tasty from this tree. And what's the name? Like the Muyeang.
Muyeang.
Yeah, Muyeang.
In the course of searching for medicinal herbs, people incidentally came across tea trees. They tried to chew on tea leaves and felt the healing effect at once. When leaves started to be cooked in boiled water, their action on the body became even stronger. At first, tea was treated as medicine. In the ancient treatise Shen Lum Ben Shu, or the initial book of the divine dragon, it is written, tea tastes bitter. When a person drinks it, he or she thinks better. He chooses to sleep less, the body becomes light and vision clears, not more than a typical description of some medical syrup.
In the fact that tea should grow naturally, just a nature, so just growing. Only 20% it's big tea tree. So, and also the tea here it's better to make a pour. Anyway, the green tea, the pearl tea, the black tea, the white tea, it can be saved from the same tea, but the processing way is different.
The tea plants on every step of the way, on all suitable, even at the slightest degree, grounds for tea cultivation. Majority of plantations is not large, but small and even miniature-like. They belong to separate families. The technology is primitive. Tea is dried in the barn on a single antediluvian piece of machinery, and still only the richest tea growers do it. It is mainly the manual labor that is used here. Leaves are drying directly in the yards. Here, dust flies over them and dog's hair. They cover the tea only from the top, from rain. It is no surprise that in the beginning of a tea ceremony, tea leaves are rinsed with boiling hot water. When I looked at the conditions where the elite kinds of the Chinese tea are made, I would prefer not just to rinse it before the use, but to wash it properly with soap. Representatives of Dai people live in the village of Zanglana. The complicated web of the roads, horse paths and narrow trails passing along the strongly rugged mountain district in the western part of the provinces of Sichuan and Yunnan and also across Tibet is called the Ancient Tea and Horse Way. One of the branches of this long and difficult way began in the Zanglana village. There are people here, still alive, who, in youth, used to accompany the caravans of horses with tea to Tibet. We are guests of one of such veterans. He lives in a traditional house, planned for a big closed-knit family. the house has 2 floors. It is on pillars. They sleep on the floor. To recall the childhood with blankets and mattresses. They cook food on an open fire, like on a bonfire. The food is simple. The noodles are not handmade, but from the shop. The vegetables are their own, from the kitchen garden. The family is engaged in the production of tea all their life, but they don't drink it themselves. It is too expensive. Forget the tea. Several years ago, the residents of this village forgot what is the real hunger and began to eat to satiety. The procedure of qualitative tea production is divided into several stages and demands special skills, knowledge, physical efforts, and patience. Tea leaves are fried on pans as sunflower seeds, stirring slowly, constantly, so they touch the hot surface for an approximately identical time. In the course of frying, leaves need to start to curdle, but to retain their integrity and not to crumble. For this purpose, it is necessary to choose the optimum temperature and the correct time of frying. There can be no mistakes here. Half-cooked leaves quickly spoil, and the tea turns out with a grassy smell.
So they just make a cake of tea about 357 grams. So they have 7 cakes, so 3 times 1, so it become like the more than 2,000 grams of the tea for 1 pack. And one horse, it can take in the bucket maybe 40 cake, 40 bag of the tea. Also for the farmers, as you can see here. But this is new, it's from this year, so you can see right.
Without brand.
Without brand, because it's his tea. He just bring his tea to factory to ask, could you price tea with me? Something like that.
The caravans of horses and mules used to complete the way from Jiangshui to Dali in a month. Today, this part of tea and horseway is covered by the bus in 1 day only.
Да, тут чай какая-то, конечно, больше не чай, а какая-то смесь из фруктов и чаеподобных компонентов. А так в целом нормально, жаж не доляет.
Dali, during the most part of its history, was a part of the state of Nanzhao. In the 9th century, the borders of the state of Nanzhao were constantly extending. Part of the present Chinese province of Sichuan, the northern part of Burma and Vietnam, joined its territory. However, already in the next century, the state began to weaken. In 1252, it was captured by the Mongols under the leadership of Khan Hubilaya. Old Dali, by its appearance, the typical Chinese medieval city with a fortification, temples, stone buildings, parks, and fountains. Tibetan influence is felt here. The dishes of the Tibetan cuisine have appeared in the restaurants, and original Tibetan tea. Very tasty. The The most important local site is approximately 1 kilometer away from the city walls. 3 pagodas stand equidistant from each other and form an equilateral triangle. The 16-story square pagoda of Jiangshui has the height of about 70 meters and is among the highest Buddhist pagodas of China. 2 other pagodas are much smaller in size. The Chongsheng Monastery was the main royal monastery of the Dali Kingdom. It was founded even before the construction of the first pagoda, but it was not strong enough and soon burned down. It was lying in ruins until the beginning of the 21st century. It has been restored especially for tourists. They did not save money for it. They built the pavilions and ponds with colored carps and statues. To the north of Dali, the tea and horseway goes through the town of Jiangshui, that was well known by its markets in ancient times, to Lijiang, located at the bottom of the snow peak mountains Yulon Huishan. The life of Lijiang and customs of local residents have been described in detail in the autobiographical story The Forgotten Kingdom by the Russian traveler Peter Goulart. He lived here from 1942 to 1949. According to him, as a result of war, the caravan trade between Lhasa and Lijiang endured unknown take-up. It were the last days of the ancient tea and horse way. In 1950, the Chinese National Liberation Army has entered Tibet. The Chinese began to actively build roads. The old tea and horse way couldn't compete with them and soon became only a history. Lijiang, that lost its importance as the large trade city on the tea and horseway, began to gradually turn into a tourist site. The houses in the old center don't get destroyed but are being restored. New construction is forbidden. The city is under the protection of UNESCO. This time we will try a shish kebab from quail eggs. I'll tell you now what it tastes like. Everything is delicious and hopefully healthy.
Сытно, вкусно и, надеюсь, полезно.
Water in Lijiang is everywhere. Here are the river with huge water wheels, channels, irrigation ditches, and numerous springs. One can bathe or wash clothes. But there is a problem with drinking water. As anywhere in China, tap water is not for drinking. Therefore, they preserved the ancient profession of the water carrier. It smells good, of spices, super, like anchovies, only fried. It is edible and tasty. We are going further. We will taste the yak meat now. It is wrapped as candy for some reason. Now let's taste. It is meat with flavor of sweets, salt and something else. It's okay to eat.
Довольно неплохо. Есть можно.
Slightly to the north from the old town, there is the Park of Black Dragon. Here is the Pond of Black Dragon and the Palace of Black Dragon and the Temple of Black Dragon Springs. Everything about the dragon, only itself, is missing, and most likely it was never here. We are crossing Yangtze and moving to the north towards Tibet. The surrounding landscapes are becoming more and more Tibetan. The city of Shangri-La is already in Tibet. It is not on the territory of the Tibetan Autonomous Area, where the foreigners are permitted only in the presence of a special permission. In 2001, the city of Chondian, also known as Xialtan, was officially renamed as Shangri-La. One mystical place in James Hilton's novel, Lost Horizon, was similarly called. The place described in the fantasy novel was only the result of the imagination of the novelist carried away by mysticism. But the Chinese authorities came to the conclusion that it is about Chondian. Hotels and restaurants were built especially for tourists. Ancient Tibetan temples and monasteries have been repaired. At the top of the Turtle Hill, the world's largest prayful wheel was established. It is hard to turn it, but the result will be most certainly significant. What exactly, it will become clear only in the following life. The tea caravans would leave from here further to the northwest, towards Lhasa, but we won't be able to walk on their way. Ahead is the border of the Tibetan Autonomous Region. Foreigners without special permission are not permitted.
Ну как? Китайская кухня?
How is the Chinese cuisine? Now we will try local noodles, to get acquainted with the local culture, to live as an ordinary Chinese, to eat noodles. You can compare here. See the difference? We are not going to leave out of principle. We will surely try noodles. How so? To visit China and not to try instant noodles? The Emaishan Mount, one of the foremost sacred Buddhist mountains of China and the highest of them. Emaishan, in translation from Chinese, means beautiful mountains. They always drew the attention of travelers by their beauty. According to the legend, Bodhisattva Samantabhadra visited the mountains once. In Chinese, he is called Puxian Pus. Many are even confident that he is still invisibly here. It was exactly on the Emaishan mountain where the first Buddhist temple was built on the territory of China. In the peak of Buddhism blossoming, there were over 170 monasteries and temples here. Only 28 of them have remained until now. Our rise begins with the visit to the Emaishan Museum. It tells us about the geological structure of the mountain, its flora and fauna, both prehistoric and modern. The ropeway and 2 trails lead to the top of the mountain. The pedestrian rise takes 2 days. Therefore, most of the tourists prefer to go up the mountain by transport. Tsindinsa Temple, or the Temple of the Golden Top, is at the altitude of 3,077 meters above sea level. It was destroyed at the time of the Cultural Revolution as the remnant of a shadowy religious past. At the beginning of the 21st century, it was restored, now as a symbol, the symbol of new times, time of not so much religious revival as much as commercial. Now the Emaishan Mountain is not only a sacred place, it is one of the most popular tourist sites. The entrance is, of course, for a charge. Chengdu, the capital of the province of Sichuan, the large economic center of China and, at the same time, one of the most ancient cities of the country. It was here when tea became a popular drink instead of a medical drug. The huge contribution to promoting tea was made by Buddhist monks. There is even a legend that the appearance of tea is the merit of the first patriarch of the Chinese Chan Buddhism. Bodhidharma, before his death, bequeathed to the followers to use tea as means of promoting sincere cheerfulness in religious feats. It was in Buddhist monasteries where there were first landings of tea that could be called not just some handmade gardens, but a prototype of real tea plantations. In China, many kinds of tea are called by the names of the mountains they were picked on, and it is hardly possible to think of it as a mere coincidence that all well-known Chinese teas are collected in the same mountains where the well-known Buddhist monasteries are located. From the monks, the tea hobby passed over to simple people. Here, anything is done in a joint effort. Therefore, as soon as tea began to get into the broad people's masses, the first tea places started to appear. At the time of the Cultural Revolution, all tea places in Chengdu were closed, but they have been reviving in recent years. The whole life of Chinese people and their culture are inseparably linked with tea. Within one, even the longest travel, it is only possible to get acquainted with them briefly. To walk a small part of the tea way. We have done exactly this by having passed through the southern provinces of China from Shanghai to Chengdu in 2 months. The trip across China comes to an end, and the World Without Visas project continues. Ahead are the new travels across the countries, visa-free for Russians.